proper gang is stressing. RPS, we on a nesting. Only real ones gonna get this. Fake ones only surface. They can miss the message. Timbuktu got bodies, yeah. Find them in our records. Auto hosting message. Squad are represented. Killing you with knowledge, yeah. The oppa's getting dirty. Oh, you're so effective. Cause we're so effective. Let go of your worries, yeah. The whole thing is a sinner. We got it and we get it. Offering refreshment. Level up your conscience, yes. Honestly, the essence. This wave is uncontainable. Facts are undebatable. You lanes are unrelatable. Give a fuck about saving you. We could keep on playing you. You just keep complaining too. Game is unescapable unless you're with the gang or no.
Messing with the penguin. We're messing with the penguin. 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 Fucking with the penguins. Yeah, with the penguins. I'm coming with a vengeance, trying to make you come to your senses. Forget the general consensus, just pay attention. Your daughter has paid for good intentions. I'm clenching my back wrenching, representing only the most superior, independent media. We got that real shit fucking encyclopedia. We're bringing an end to this mass hysteria. They wanna know why it's so serious, cause you must be delirious. If you're still believing stuff, get a grip and show some evidence for your bold claims. We don't play no games, we stay relentless, exposing those events. Quick, the IPS are making an entrance. Busting doors down, cause now's the time for interventions that I mentioned. We're affecting so many man across the spectrum. We stand out from the crowd, we don't blend in. Steady gaining tremendous momentum. There's nothing close to resembling. Check the emblem, it's a penguin, not a gremlin. Just letting you know you're on an infinite plane, it's never bending. We strike like Tenpin, killing all fears and breaking the tension. Got another Hawks army, digging deep in the trenches. Come and join in, be adventurous. Quit being so sensitive, forget the censorship. We ain't telling fibs. Messing with the penguin. We're messing with the penguin. Messing with the penguin. Messing with the penguin. Messing with the
Okay, it is here. 6/11, 2024. A day we've been waiting for 365 days since last year. And this year, as I expected, there's even more to suggest that this is it. And along with it, and this is why you can't just dismiss this, the parallel narrative of the Trump head wound scenario has been concurrently developing. It's out of control. It's out of every major pundit's mouth. Everyone's saying JFK. Everyone's asking when we're going to have the next JFK event, from General Flynn to Joe Rogan, among others. And there are a few other interesting recent developments. For example, Alex Jones being liquidated, and I believe he's about to give his last show. I mean, that's ominous. His last show. Anyway, this is the IPS evening deprogram here to add context that we think people might want to know. If you want to call in, the numbers on the screen, 563-999-3664. Phones are open now. Let's go through my recent notes. Again, the big news, or the big story, is we're watching this ongoing development regarding various threads. And there's this very significant thread in the Metascript, in the zeitgeist that we've picked up on, that points to a domestic violent extremist 9/11, a Turner Diaries scenario. And it's all there. The stage has been set. And you'll see as we go through here how it has been, in fact, building and building up. And our premise, our central premise here, and this isn't based on prophecy from my perspective. I'm not a Bible prophet. What I am suggesting here is that you can read the future under the assumption that the news is rigged, and that they use the news agencies are integrated with the wider media environment, all entertainment, all media, video games, it's all controlled top down, for the express purpose of conditioning us to accept the fake news as it's presented. So I do not in any way expect this thing to be any realer than the previous one, although the public will think it is. Just a couple of points right off the bat. So when I'm basically cheering for Seattle to get Oppenheimered, it's nothing personal to those who live there. Like, I don't take it that seriously. Relatedly, Russia begins a stage of tactical nuclear weapon drills right now. Russia begins second stage of tactical nuclear weapons drills, exercises in the Caribbean, and this is going on right now as we speak. So we'll touch on that. General Flynn said, quote, a Russian response here in the homeland, suggesting that Putin's nuclear subs are somehow part of an offensive, but there's this, or that he's, and that's again the main thread right now. We're talking about this hypothetical notion of a nuke hitting Seattle or outside of Seattle, and everything just seems to be in place. I was doing some research on this today, and I came across this strange story from the BBC from last month. Inert nuclear missile found in U.S. man's garage. And the story is that this man had part of a missile in his garage, and he's in Washington. And the police officer, and this is according to the news, and this just sounds fake, he actually refers to Elton John's Rocket Man song. He says, and we think it's going to be a long, long time before we get another call like this again. Some kind of a strange joke here, but again, this is the idea here of having a missile at someone's house. Someone's house is like a broken arrow. You know, the whole broken arrow scenario has to do with missing nukes. There have been 32 broken arrow events, so we've been waiting for number 33, and this seems like it could be an indicator. A quick update, Hunter Biden found guilty on all charges in a gun trial. The irony of this is just off the charts. Here you have this concept of God-given rights, you're not going to take our guns, and now they're like, this guy broke some gun rules that are pretty obscure, and it really is just, to me, it's just tenuous, it's weak, but they got him. And some think that this is simply to take away the claim that the justice system is rigged when they throw Donald Trump in the slammer. Because how can you say it's rigged? The president's own son is in jail. Speaking of jail, Hannah Reid, the one who handed Alec Baldwin the gun, she wants him in jail. Now, I don't know if she wants to confront him in jail. She looks pretty mean with those tats, but she wants him in jail as well. Steve Bannon's going to jail in a few weeks. Looking forward to that. It's just a PR stunt. It really is. You know, this is a trend. They should arrest Stu Peters. You know, if he wasn't a Fed, he would already be in jail. Okay, let me catch up on comments, and then we'll continue to go through the notes. There's just so much going on right now. There's a story of Bianca Ellis, who killed a 3-year-old. Joker smile, laughing, waving a knife around. Some symbolism attached to this whole story. Could be fake. I suspect it's fake. Ahead of shutdown, Alex Jones gives a historic tour of his studio. And this story's been popping off. Major fault line off west coast could trigger catastrophe. A lot of earthquake hype. And a lot of compelling and intriguing information about this De Niro thing. We were right to hone in on Robert De Niro's significance outside the Trump trial and its connection to the taxi driver, to the Joker, the assassination theme. It actually goes further back. And in the movie Machete, and Cupstar pointed this out, the De Niro character is a Trump-like character. He's kind of an anti-immigrant. He's definitely portraying Trump. Anyhow, he gets shot and he's taken to Park Lane Hospital. Kennedy goes to Parkland Hospital. The name Parkland is really interesting to look at in the bigger context. We've done some breakdowns of the King of Staten Island we'll get into. Also, I think we've covered... No, we didn't even get to this yesterday. We've kind of been preparing for today, 6/11. A rodeo bull hops a fence surrounding an Oregon arena, ran through the concessions into the parking lot and injured people. This is one of these things where, yeah, some suggest to me, is this some kind of portentous event? And we'll look into that as well, because there are some clues in there. Although it's highly believable, and I side with the bull. Okay, now why is Google Chrome giving me obnoxious loud alerts? Gremlins. Gremlins do exist. Linda Curtis says, what guns are we talking about with Hunter? LOL. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take a second here and turn off my notifications. Give me a moment here. Done. Okay, phones are open. 563-999-3664. Again, that's 563-999-3664. Main topic today, see you later, Seattle. I think that's one of the main topics. We've been discussing this at length over the last few days, and so no one here is really uh, unaware of this significance or potential significance of today. From my perspective and where I've come across it, it ties this theme together of the Turner Diaries, white nationalism, a domestic 9/11, and it's all heavily encoded into the Timothy McVeigh character, who is relevant for two reasons: Waco, American Apocalypse, Donald Trump kicking off his campaign in Waco, and then the recent anniversary of the Oklahoma bombing and the Waco incineration. We had that Burning Man outside of the Trump trial. When we tie all this together, you can see it's actually highly integrated as a script. So just to update on this term, military incident terminology. The United States Armed Forces uses a number of terms to define the magnitude and extent of nuclear and radiation accidents. So the broken arrow refers to warheads or components that are lost or accidental events. Lost in transit, radioactive contamination, but there's a list of broken arrow incidents, and the U.S. Department of Defense has recognized 32 broken arrow incidents from 1950 to 1980. So we're waiting for broken arrow number 33, and I thought maybe that thing in Washington was kind of a clue about this. Elephant Tusk says all quiet on the Western Front. It's 6:11 p.m. and as of right now, 6:11 p.m. Mountain Time on 6/11, Seattle still exists. Joined by 3 Up, 3 Down, Jennifer Reeves, Shannon Jones, Symbia, Diana South, Dua Sampera, Elephant Tusks. Ted Stryker says, JL said, if not this year, next year is the last time for it to happen to make sense. Well, the thing is, the build up towards Trump and this JFK scenario is reaching a crescendo. And I don't see how they can maintain that for yet another year. And in my view, this would make a lot more sense. HLG, Roxy W, P Trippa, Linda Curtis. Oh, yes, about the guns. Okay, let me get into the guns really quick. Hunter Biden was a drug addict while he was in possession of weapons that he had purchased, and he lied on the forms. So he's facing some 20-some years. Now, I don't know if this is going to actually stick like that, but many are suggesting this was just sort of a way, and I think Trump even suggested it, to hide the fact that the system is rigged, which is kind of a conundrum. It's like a catch-22. If he got jail, I don't know. It's just like it's a contradiction. I think that the Second Amendment types are not taking Hunter's side. Like they can't put politics to the side and stick to their principles. Stuart McKenzie says, anyone see Dabu 777 surviving end times? Fissures have opened up near the Cascadia fault line, and they're predicting a 9.2 earthquake with possible tsunami. Well, one of the scenarios with the Poseidon, with the submarine-borne nuclear warhead, was a 42-foot or a large tsunami hitting Seattle. They said a 7.5 magnitude earthquake would cause a tsunami, and they did all these simulations. They do drills for this stuff. And we have to keep in mind the scale that they're capable of working with. I mean, they just had a mass casualty drill in Berlin where they simulated 900 people being injured and or killed. 900 people injured in a simulated attack on Berlin. Now I'm just eliminating the first two words, crisis actors. So crisis actors exist? Wait, I thought this was a conspiracy theory. In preparation for Euro 2024, a hospital received numerous victims from a simulated terror attack on Tuesday. So they can bring out 900 people. And these are just the performers. These are not the makeup artists, the camera crew, the writers, the directors, the organizers, whoever passes out the water bottles. So I'm looking at this as an example of how big of a movie set they can create. Think January 6th. Not only did Ashley Babbitt not die, but the whole riot was simulated. The whole fight between the cops and the MAGAs, yeah, that was simulated. It was all Braveheart action. It was not a stimulated riot. It wasn't provoked. It wasn't stimulated by feds. No, it was simulated. They were just dancing for all intents and purposes. Well, they did the guided tour inside, but you wouldn't know that if you only looked at the MSM coverage of it. But if you watched it live, you would have seen it. There was a qualitative difference in the violence that you see in something like a January 6th event compared to what you'd see on TV. I mean, sorry, on Twitter or X. When you look at real fights, real riots, there's an element of chaos that just wasn't there. It was just so performative. J6 was a performative riot, and it was totally fake. Bunch of crisis actors. All right, continuing here. Diana South says, never wear red to a rodeo. You wear blue, you're protected from space lasers, says Dua Sampera. Eddie F says, something will happen before the election. Well, Joker 2 comes out on 10/4. And we have to keep in mind, too, that everything they do is predicated on what they have saturated our collective psyche with. So we're prepared for the nuke. We're prepared for Oppenheimer and Fallout. We're prepared for leaving the world behind, going into our bunkers. We're ready for the white noise, the airborne event. All this stuff has been foreshadowed. And I think that the talk about Trump and this martyrdom stuff has reached a crescendo, and I don't see them dragging this out another year. But I don't have any specific reason to look at 6/11 as the date, but Jurassic Liars does. And I think it makes a lot of sense. It's almost too perfect, though. It's almost too perfect. Like, they'd almost want to throw us off at this point, I imagine. Just make it 6/12. Like all the crazy 33-year-olds running around doing stuff and now suddenly 34. In fact, I think the lady that ran around with a knife and killed the 3-year-old was 33. Quarantine the 33-year-olds. We could have a year of peace. Yeah, that's right, Kevin Mooring. Cuban Missile Crisis 2.0. So that's already been a meme that's been put out there. So we're not just reading into it. They kind of force meme these things. This is from a few days ago. Cuban Crisis 2.0. Russian sub to dock in Cuba. And this is all in the news right now. And it's just like, well, what are we really seeing? We're seeing pieces on the world stage chessboard. That's pretty much it. And they're putting things into the realm of possibility, which will continue to go through all these things. I want to go through my notes first of all, though. I had a number of things earmarked. A lot of interesting subjects, however. And if you want to call in and add to anything, feel free. Phones are open. We have an hour and 40 minutes. And if nothing happens to Seattle between now and the end of this live stream, and it does after, we will 100% go back live again. In fact, we'll go into the Discord server. Kevin Mooring says, bring back JFK. Yeah, I don't think it makes sense. I don't believe that JFK can come back unless they have time machines and med beds, which is the assumption that most noners make. But in my view, they're not bringing him back literally, nor is Trump going to unzip his face and JFK's beneath him. That's what many also think. Now, what they have done is they have, in the minds of the brainwashies, the fanatical cult of Trump worshippers, they have conflated the two. So he's Jesus, he's Lincoln, he's JFK, he's Elvis. So Trump has become something of an idol to these individuals who are Trump deranged. We talk about Trump derangement syndrome, and you look at Robert De Niro, Alec Baldwin, and the harpies on The View. But the truly deranged Trump are the Trumpers, like the people who are just deep into Trump with the JFK worship, the cultiness, the fact that they don't care about the 34 charge, the felonies, and all this stuff. That's deranged. That's Trump derangement. Oh, Al Capone. That's right. He's also Al Capone. And he's also King David. Now, they didn't quite call him MLK, but he was arraigned on the 55th anniversary of MLK's death. Probably not a coincidence. And do you remember he took that suit that he wore the day he was arrested and he had it chopped up into 47 pieces and auctioned it off. This, similar, of course, has been compared to the auctioning off of the garments of Jesus. Linda Curtis says Trump is a Russian doll. That's pretty funny. Yeah, you unzip Trump and it's JFK. The whole thing with the QAnon thing is that they've kind of like left JFK Jr. in the dust. They were all about JFK Jr. and now they moved on. It's just the strangest thing. Diana South says Trump is a legend in his own mind. He's a centerfold for obese women with walkers. Okay. Well, look, again, I'm just saying that these are world stage characters. I don't really have strong emotions about them. What I do recognize, though, is that they exist, like in our imaginations before they ever present them to us. Like Trump in his current form is Biff Tannen, but to the um, collective psyche, he's been projected onto our minds, through these various characters, and it goes so far back. I've compared him maybe to Musk as maybe between Musk and Trump. There's a kind of competition to see who has the most basis in predictive programming, who's the fakest. I mean, Elon Musk comes right out of a book, Mars: A Technical Tale. I believe he even commented on it once. Now, I will hand it to the JFK Jr. impersonators, Vincent Fuchsia, Negative 48, Juan oh 07. They really just moved in on JFK Jr.'s groupies. That's kind of what they did, and I think they kind of tapped out that market and abandoned ship, and now they're just looking for JFK because JFK Jr. is no longer in the building. And speaking of Elvis, I mentioned Elvis a minute ago. Elvis is in the building, said Elon Musk. He sent this tweet a few days ago. Now, what does this refer to? It refers to the world's largest supercomputer that Elon Musk is going to have built in Memphis. Yep, Elon Musk's xAI to build world's largest supercomputer in Memphis. So this is right out of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where the answer to everything is the number 42, and the answer is given by the supercomputer in the center of the universe. So here you have a connection between that book, the number 42, the supercomputer theme, AI, and Musk all rolled into one. And this has been a reoccurring theme. In fact, the number 42, as often as we see it outside of Musk, it ultimately points to the same thing, but in his case, it also integrates with this book this book called Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And in his car into his, what is it, a car commercial? With the whole Starman thing, he sent a car into space. On the dashboard, it said, "Don't panic," which is right out of the Douglas Adams book, Hitchhiker's Guide. And by the way, Douglas Adams was born on 3/11. Pete Shea pointed that out. Probably relevant. What does 42 mean in Hitchhiker's Guide? It is the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. So is it? I think so. I mean, you could make the case. If we are in some kind of demiurgic trap, a time-space prison for souls, the number 42 would correlate with that nicely. It's kind of ominous. It might suggest that we're in Satan's realm or something. Not that I'm religious, but I'm just talking about the iconography, the symbolism, the idea of Saturn or the material realm that is in some way a prison for amnesic souls who conflate their existence with the matter itself. Linda Curtis says, "Isn't xAI Musk's kid's name?" I think those are the first three characters. His full name is actually Elon Musk's Google Chrome's suggested password. It's unpronounceable, so they just took the first three characters. Kevin Mooring says, "We have to make it to the Joker 2. It's next." Yeah, see, exactly. There's no way to end the world or screw everything up before that movie, but you don't have post-predictive programming or post-programming. It's always before. But we have to also point out the Joker Batman thing has tracked with major world psyops for at least the last 12 years. If we start with Sandy in Boston, the Aurora shooting, and the predictive programming contained within Nolan's films are like referencing movies that he would even be doing in the future. or future events. Case in point, Batman Dark Knight Rises, the the face mask scenario that we're confronting in 2020. You had Fauci coming out saying, and others saying, you're not wearing it for you, you're wearing it to protect the people that you love. Well, that was a statement right out of the Batman movie from 2012, where he says to the guy who's not wearing the mask, who says, I don't need the mask, I'm not afraid. And Batman's like, well, it's not for you to, it's to protect the people you love. And so there you have a reference years in advance. And at this point, he hands the maskless character a spiked ball that looks like a COVID ball. And he says, count to 5 and throw it, which he does. And it explodes into a mushroom cloud. And again, this is Christopher Nolan, who did Oppenheimer 10 years later. So I see this as foreshadowing for 2020, then count to 5 and you get the mushroom cloud. So 2025 would be my prediction for Oppenheimer to be realized. Although we're pretty close to that right now. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if they pulled that one off right now in Seattle, which is kind of the expectation. Oppenheimer, Fallout, Nolan Brothers. Also connected to some, is it Nathan Crowley? I mean, it gets really interesting when you look at the whole connection between Batman, Joker, the various psyops, and then how the symbol of Batman, or the icon, the idol, this archetype, has been attached to the right and to Trump, whereas Joker has been attached to the left and to the I guess the leftist mobs, the class warfare scenario, kind of the communist versus fascist. It's all built into this. Ollie Goering says, I like listening to the IPS. Awesome. And I like the chat. I like the fact that we have this ongoing think tank. Excellent content creators, commenters, researchers, and our Discord server is coming back to life. We're going to be hanging out in there frequently, doing open phones. Duas Impera says, yes, Elvis as the AI god. Now that's not far off. Very interesting. I want to do a deep dive into a lot of this stuff, a lot of the Elvis, Saturn, Rockstar, and the David Bowie Ye connections to the man who fell to earth. Very intriguing. Okay, Water Walking Jesus says Elvis kissed Trump on the rump. I didn't see that. Tomino said 24 looks more like the Jupiter symbol to me, but if you rotate it 180, you basically get Saturn. Well, the idea is the sigil, right? The idea of the astrological symbol is a combination of a cross and sickle, and yeah, you could actually make the same out of it. Although with Jupiter's symbol, you would be overlapping them instead of just attaching one at the bottom of the other. But I'm looking at this in usage, and what you get throughout in various instances, you can see, well, you can just replace the symbol of Saturn, which is very overt and easy to see, with the number 42, and it corresponds and aligns. And they've been doing this for a very long time. Like a lot of people spot the 33s, but they're often attended by this. And I think there's a meaning you can extrapolate here. One has to do with ascension, and one has to do with descent or falling. Kevin Mooring says 9/11 explosion on building looks like the Dark Knight movie poster. Okay, so that's an image of a burning bat. You got the silhouette of a bat in the hole in the building, and it's on fire. So the burning bat as Phoenix, was introduced years before the bat was the catalyst for a reset. Linda Curtis says Joker 2 is probably about fooling you twice. Good observation. Probably true. Again, 4/4, 2023, Trump was arraigned and they were filming Joker 2 outside. So you got the mob outside and it was a mob scene, a riot, and he's on the inside. So that's one layer. Then Joker 2 also has the connection with the second coming, Trump's second coming. T2, Joker 2, these have been reoccurring symbols. And in this case, this 4/4 happened to be the 44th birthday of Heath Ledger, who is, of course, dead, having been replaced by Joker 2, Joaquin Phoenix. The name Phoenix also connects to the idea of the replacement or the resurrection, because that's what the Phoenix is essentially about, resurrection. But then you can kind of even go a couple steps deeper with this Joker connection when you get into the next trial where Maxwell Azarello sets himself on fire, and then this next one with Robert De Niro. And the De Niro connection is that he's in the Joker movie, which is based on Taxi Driver. But in Taxi Driver, De Niro is the assassin. That's why it's so significant that he was there. So he was the assassin, and not only that, but in quote real life, John Hinckley was inspired to attempt to assassinate Reagan, and he shot Reagan. But he was inspired by De Niro. I mean, think about it. He was inspired by Robert De Niro to shoot Ronald Reagan. Of course, he was De Niro's character, Travis Bickle. But if you just follow the connection here, Taxi Driver, Joker, De Niro, Trump, and now you add in the movie Machete, where De Niro, playing a Trump-like character, gets shot and is taken to the Park Lane Hospital. We'll continue to explore these various links, and there's a lot more to go into. The Maxwell Azarello stuff is intriguing. The Burning Man outside the Trump rally, who I believe they, as some kind of a joke, tying into this general theme of cannibalism, because, the whole thing is Joker's class warfare, eat the rich, kill the rich. Maxwell Azarello had a eat the rich shirt when he's hanging out with Newt Gingrich. And when he roasted himself, it was right next to a hot dog stand. Roxy W says, got evacuation notice on iPhone due to fire, BRB. Are you in Seattle? Tom3 says, that's sort of why I mention it. Half meaning the ascension and descent. Yeah, it could actually be both. Have you seen that John D symbol of the, what is he called? I think it's called it's a combination of all of the planetary symbols rolled into one particular symbol that you can kind of just unpack. It's called as hieroglyphic monad or monad. Here you go. So you take this symbol. This is again John Dee's work, and with the same symbols, he turns Saturn into Jupiter into Mercury, Mars, Venus, it's all rolled up into one. So this is it. You can unpack it. We should do some IPS Sunday schools and do deep dives into the symbolism. I have been doing a lot of work, or rather research, into John Dee's work in particular because of his historical significance and his concept of the world. Someone in Discord earlier, maybe it was yesterday, was suggesting they believe that the world was maybe Minecraft-like, like all cubes. And I was Googling this, and it turns out that Plato conjectured that the universe is made up of cubes. And so here's an article from the University of Pennsylvania. Plato was right. Earth is made, on average, of cubes. Anyway, he's not saying Minecraft, but John Dee kind of is. John Dee's conception of the world seems to imply a plane of existence with multiple layers that you can tune into, but that we're at the bottom of it. And in this concept, man is the quintessence, that we are like perceiver creators, that we're in a sense that we are the microcosm of the bigger picture, the macrocosm, that we're all in a sense in a direct relationship with the universe, but you wouldn't know it if you weren't aligned properly in terms of your concept of the world, the way you exercise your will. I mean, he's a magician, a magi, and he believed, anyway, that through his black scrying mirror he was in contact with higher intelligences. Looks like an iPhone. But there's a few reasons why he's of interest to me. It has to do with his relationship with Mercator, and it has to do with his concept of the world as a plane, because this is a contradiction. On the one hand, in his own writings, we live on a plane, and we have some kind of supernatural agency, or it's there to be tapped into. So he's like this Gandalf wizard type. But on the other hand, he's an advisor to Mercator, who is mapping the globe. So what is it? Did he accept the Copernican revolution, or was he still believing in this plane? It's kind of an interesting bit of I don't know what you would call that. I mean, it's a highly significant fact that he also coined the term British Empire. So is it a contradiction? which one is the right one. And I lean more towards the plane. Minecraft Infinite Plane says Tominoid. Why no curve? Yep. Okay, let's continue. We are looking at Trump's jailed sentencing will be 7/11, but right now we're focusing on 6/11. Salty Siren posted this. This is interesting. The new limited edition flavors of Mountain Dew. So a little backtracking. Back when, after Godzilla zapped Maui, there was this. Well, as it happened, you remember the fires in Maui? The space lasers. Was it Chinese space lasers or Jewish space lasers? Whatever it was, Maui got roasted. And at that time, Mountain Dew had a flavor out. And I even saw this walking into a Walmart. And it's like the predictive programming, the illusion is just, it's everywhere. It's inescapable. So I walk into a Walmart and I see Mountain Dew Maui Blast. So Maui Blast, Mountain Dew, the whole theme was about dews, direct energy weapons. So it seemed like this is some kind of a sick joke. Well, the next thing they release is the Star Spangled Splash. And the Star Spangled Splash seemed to refer to the Francis Scott Key Bridge, which splashed when it fell into the river when it was hit by the cargo ship. So there's this connection between Mountain Dew and predicting disasters. I think one of them even predicts a blackout. But the next one is Liberty Chill. Now, Liberty Chill, what could that mean? I'm thinking, when you say chill, you mean stop, like you freeze an activity. Liberty Chill sounds to me like nuclear winter. That would be my guess. Nuclear winter. Winter is coming, nuclear winter, frozen empire, new empire, reoccurring theme. Elephant Tusk says another mall incident in Atlanta done by a 34-year-old. Yeah, he's probably 33. Whenever I see these shootings reported in these big cities, it's like if I don't see a death toll, I assume it's real. If they're like 33 people died because some kid ran into a mall, and you're like, wow, 33 dead, then everyone just runs with it like it's true, and it's like, no, these are the ones where you have to question it, because that's an extraordinary claim. But when these things pop off for real, there's a number of people hit, but they're usually not killed, and you don't get their names. There's no agenda. There's no press conference. They don't become martyrs. So I'm not a reality denialist. People do get shot, but the video game stats that you see with some of these mass shooters just don't happen in real life. You know, you can't be a 90-pound weakling kicking down a door and then get 26 headshots, you know, in 5 minutes or something. Or I think it was the Virginia Tech killer had 33 headshots, and it's like, how do you even imagine this to be real unless you're just so immersed in video games that it just seems real? And I think that's one of the functions of video games, is to condition people to accept, not just to, I guess, program you in ways they want you to behave, but to also to get you to accept that these things are in the realm of possibility. I mean, obviously they have instructional value. I believe the families of Uvalde are suing Call of Duty for training the kid how to do the shooting. Grand Theft Auto, you know, ought to be sued for a lot of these riots. I mean, if you just look, it's like, yeah, there's probably a correlation there. Although Grand Theft Auto is really just the Democrat Party platform, which was fully implemented in 2020. And it may happen again. Do you remember when it kicked off? The first riot, the first place to be destroyed was an AutoZone. And we connected this with the autonomous zone in Chazistan. Well, just the other night, was this last night? Yeah, June 10th. A big story. An AutoZone gets looted.
Oh wow, they got the door open.
I mean, what do you expect? It's the summer. You know, school's out. What are all these scholars going to be doing with their time? But anyway, they break into an AutoZone. It made the news. I think they said it was as many as 50 people were part of this. Yeah, video shows 50 people looting an AutoZone in South LA. Now, again, this is just portentous. I'm suggesting this is very much like 2020. Maybe Linda's right. Maybe Joker 2. You remember, Joker preceded the riots of 2020. So maybe we might be having something of a rerun here. By the way, we're still watching Seattle. If you're in Seattle, let us know if you get Oppenheimered or tsunamied. Just keep your eye out. KKIN says going back to Joaquin means established by God, the Phoenix established by God. That's really good. And Finis Temporis is this YouTube channel that does these tremendous breakdowns on various movies. He did this piece on Joaquin Phoenix and how often, and this is like all of his movies, he is always some kind of Jesus Christ archetype, and it's in all of his movies. In fact, he played Jesus. He even played Jesus, like 33-year-old Jim Caviezel played Jesus. When Jim Caviezel played Jesus, they claim that when he was giving the Sermon on the Mount, on the fifth take, he was struck by lightning, and that he died, and they had to bring him back to life. Yeah, 33-year-old Jim Caviezel playing Jesus died on set, and they resurrected him. If you want to believe it, I don't. But anyway, Joaquin Phoenix, in many of his movies, portrays Jesus or is represented as such in kind of subliminal ways. Like even in 8mm, where he's the clerk at an adult video shop, he gets crucified and shot with a crossbow, I believe. But there are several examples in that movie where it's JC, Jesus Christ. I think he did Johnny Cash. Reoccurring theme, though, with Joaquin Phoenix. And the phoenix itself was a symbol of Christ at one point, as is like the rooster, for example. But the Joker movie itself represented Joaquin Phoenix as a walking phoenix. If you look like a Burning Man, if you look at the movie posters where he's walking in front of a burning car. And if you've seen the movie, at the very end, he's unconscious in the back of a cop car, which is hit by an ambulance. And then he's taken out of the cop car and put on the hood, and then he resurrects. And that's when he takes the blood from his mouth and he smears a smile onto his face, which then has his hands bloodied like stigmata. And he puts his hands out as he resurrects for the mob wearing the clown mask. So he portrays this resurrecting Christ figure. But again, this is a role that he has. It's like an over. It's kind of a like with Jim Carrey in the Serious the Dog Star thing. But with Joaquin Phoenix, it's a repeated thing. The name Phoenix is one of these world stagey names in itself. But established by God, didn't know that. Fig says, hey Tim chat, Liberty Chill okay, have to get what you're on about right now. Oh yeah, we were talking about the Mountain Dew direct energy weapon and how Mountain Dew seems to track along with the major psyops of the day. Water Walking Jesus says, what if John D. was whispering to Elvis and Trump how it was all going to go down? And Aleister Crowley was hidden in the bushes listening. Interesting question. All right, I'm still catching up. There are so many comments I missed here, but Joaquin Phoenix was in Space Camp 1986. Right, and that was the year the Challenger blew up. There may be something in that. And the Challenger explosion is worth unpacking. That was the Challenger explosion blew up at 1 minute and 13 seconds. And then the Columbia disaster was the 113th launch. And I think there was a 113 attached to the Apollo, perhaps one of the Apollo was it the incineration? I'll have to look into it. But 113 and 11.3, the whole Seattle disaster was originally, a lot of people were focused on 11.3 or 3.11. But yeah, there's a lot of repetition here. Space Camp was released 5 months after the Challenger PSYOP. Oh, that's interesting. It's like, I don't really want to be an astronaut anymore. That would be a bad marketing. I kind of think that's how they might quell any real desire to go to Mars. Because they can't deliver because it's fake. They've been selling people a pie in the sky for all this time. When it comes time to deliver, all these people with tickets to Mars are going to line up, and how would you convince them that maybe it's better to just wait for a little while or not be so enthusiastic? And I thought, well, maybe Musk could send the Starship up and do a Titanic-like event. Just let it get hit by a comet. Not an iceberg, but a space iceberg. So you have all these wealthy people on board the Starship going off to Mars, too big to fail, and then it gets hit. And suddenly, no one's really bugging Musk about getting that trip to Mars. They can delay us for another 20 years. The limiting factor is special effects. And to me, it's really problematic. I don't know how they're going to figure this out. How are they going to simulate something when their special effects department cannot compete with the entertainment's special effects departments? I watch a lot of science fiction, and NASA cannot compete. It's an example of how, I guess, visually illiterate people are, that they're not aware of the fact that the real thing looks faker than the fake stuff. That the real thing is obviously phony, and there's just this disconnect, which I think is by design. Joaquin was in The Village. Oh, The Village was an excellent movie. It explains our world perfectly. If you haven't seen The Village, between The Village and Newsbenders, and I would actually add In the Mouth of Madness, John Carpenter. I think between those you can pretty much figure this world out. Okay, let's move on here. I'm going to run through my notes. Helicopter Moon said, tell IPS to take 5 jabs on Cam. There's a comment that I saw on JL's channel today. Tell IPS to take 5 jabs. Look, I'll take 5 jabs in my neck. That's how little I fear the thing. I almost did. I was like, let me just... But that's besides the point. There's this individual in Russia who took 200... No, in Germany, who took 217. And he's not dead. So there goes your whole theory. You've been debunked. If you're anti-jab, you've been debunked. Some guy took 200 plus, and he's still fine. InfoWars hosts Alex Jones's final performance. Sounds dramatic. May come ahead of this court hearing on Friday. So what does this mean? This Alex Jones going away just as this Seattle incident is poised to take place, and this Trump head wound thing? All the predictive programming seems to be reaching a high point. InfoWars host Alex Jones may be forced to liquidate his stake in his company as soon as this Friday, when a judge is set to decide whether or not he will have to liquidate. Yeah, well, we all know the true story on this, and I think it was meant to maybe silence some of us or get us to think twice about calling out the hoaxery, but has had no effect on my outlook on this whatsoever. Laura Logan on Alex Jones says, quote, they've created a mass delusion, and they want us all to buy into it. A mass delusion. Now, of course, even though I agree with what she's saying here, she's not going to say the same thing about the mass delusions on her side. You know, this is like a choose your own apocalypse reality. There's mass delusions for the left, mass delusions for the right. And each side thinks that they're not deluded. It's like that old quote about, I don't know who said this, but like, what's the definition of a cult? It's the church down the street from yours. Okay, so let's go ahead and play this clip here. This is... Putin's military involves key ally, new stage of nuclear war practice. I'll get to that video in a minute here. I'm trying to find Laura Logan. I'll see if I can find the audio, but here's what she said. They've created mass delusion, and they want us all to buy into it. Climate, the world is about to combust. The idea that you can't eat beef and that cattle are poisoning the earth. Okay, here we go.
Delusion, and they want all...
The part that caught me was the mass delusion, because I think we need to acknowledge the existence of mass delusions.
Yeah, because he said they've created a mass delusion, and they want all of us to buy into it. Climate, the world is about to combust. Oh, the idea that you can't eat meat. Wait, you can't eat beef. You can't eat cattle are poisoning the earth. What?
They've got to get you to accept illogic because they're about to get you to do a bunch of horrible stuff.
Well, she doesn't want to know what Alex Jones is interested in eating. If things get little bad. In fact, now that he's being liquidated, I mean, I remember 6 weeks into pandemic, he was ready to eat his neighbors. Now, they liquidated, they take all his money, his neighbors aren't safe. Kevin Mooring says, remember when Loomer said that if Trump doesn't win, her life is over and meaningless? Yeah, Laura Loomer. Laura Loomer is a troll. Laura Logan, Laura Loomer. There's a number of these trolls that kind of fit the same thing. They're bomb throwers. I think they're given memes. Here's a meme, throw this one out there. But they play it safe. They're not exactly doing what we're doing. They're world stagers. I don't know how in the know these characters are, but they're WWE trash. It's just drama, like MTG and all these types. They may as well just have them wrestle. And drop the pretense that you're having some kind of political debate or discussion based on principle. All right, we're joined by X322, Uninitiated, and others rolling in. Uninitiated says, Tim, did you watch the Jones interview with Vivian Kubrick the other day? Quite dull, but she spent most of it defending the moon landing. I have it earmarked. I wanted to listen to it. And I brought this up because Stanley Kubrick was working with Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise is the Jesus Christ of Scientology. So here you have Scientology space religion and Stanley Kubrick, who represents the space fakery, Apollo 11, and who knows what other aspects of the space program that he was directing. I mean, maybe we can credit him with the Challenger explosion. But anyway, you're like, wait, look at these individuals in the same room. NASAtology, Scientology, two scammy space religions. One is mostly representative of the movie stars, and it's all celebrity obsessed, and people think it's just a cult. And then the other one is, of course, taking us to space. But they have a common origin. If you go back to L. Ron Hubbard, Jack Parsons, Marjorie Cameron, movie star, science fiction, and a guy who created a science fiction religion, and then an occultist slash rocket engineer. But it's just sort of like this group of people that form the core here, and it makes sense of our space religion, all the various elements that came into it. If you wanted to take an ancient archaic religion and dress it up with science fiction, who better than a sci-fi writer like LRH? Anyway, it's notable that Kubrick's daughter is friends with Alex Jones for a few reasons, because we are asserting that Kubrick not only faked Apollo 11, but also 9/11. Well, Alex Jones believes in moon landings. So this is all really interesting that she would defend the moon landing. And one of the things she has said is that if her father faked it, it would look a lot better. Or her arguments are always in defense of it, but it's a huge red herring, because we're not saying Stanley Kubrick faked the moon landing. We're saying Stanley Kubrick faked the 20th century. I mean, a lot of it. So it's much bigger than the moon landing. This is one of these guardrails where you're like watching a documentary, Room 237. Did Kubrick help the government and he felt bad and so he's dropping hints? It's like, no, you wouldn't have known that. But after 9/11 and after 2020, you can look at these same movies and find that no, actually, the references go beyond just that one event. Tomanoid3 says Alex Jones will solve the homeless problem one meal at a time. Yeah. Simulation, Rumsfeld Matrix, Unknown Unknowns, the things you refuse to admit you know about. Well, we take into account the known unknowns. Like we are very well aware of the fact that the mass media augments what it presents with special effects. And it's not just that they lie or that they run psychological operations. It's that they literally write the news before it's implemented when it comes to the big stories, broad strokes, and everything else bounces off of it. And that is not an extraordinary claim. Every PSYOP is evidence of prefabricated bits of history. Here's another scene, and these are the things that go into the historical record. Oswaldo says Tom Cruise is supposed to start filming on the ISS in December 2024, I read somewhere. Well, Tom Cruise has died in space in a few different places. I think on South Pole. His corpse is on the moon. My contention is that Tom Cruise is Major Tom. Ground Control to Major Tom, David Bowie, Space Oddity. He's part of this thing. And I have a whole mind map, and we've talked a lot about Tom Cruise as a world stage character, the iconography, what he represents. When I say he's the Jesus Christ of Scientology, I'm not exaggerating. And if you look up Tom Cruise 33, you'll see there's something fishy going on. All Tom Cruise's wives were 33 at the time of divorce. Yep. He divorces all of his wives at 33, and I think they're all divorced 11 years apart. So it's like 11, 11, 11. Scripted. And then the Top Gun series, Top Gun 1, Top Gun 2, filmed 33 years apart, chronologically in the script, 33 years apart, loaded with sun god symbolism. Death, resurrection stuff, characters named Rooster, Phoenix. We've done an extensive deep dive on this, so it's highly significant, again, that he was working with Kubrick so closely, Eyes Wide Shut, given his role with Scientology, and given his role with Kubrick. You're like, well, he's going on the ISS. So he learned from probably the world's best space faker. And that's kind of what I think. I think maybe that's what we're going to see next, his magnum opus. Tom Cruise has some aspirations for this thing in space. It says here, Axiom Station. So the Axiom Station will be connected to the ISS. Space Entertainment Enterprise said the company is a co-producer of Cruise's space film. And Elon Musk may launch Tom Cruise into space. They've been talking about this for several years. Okay, here we go. NASA confirms they are indeed working with Cruise. Well, we shall see. I kind of think the ISS is a jalopy and it's an embarrassment, and until they pull it down, they can't improve it. At least that was my thinking. But now I don't know if they can improve it. After having looked at the Chinese space station, which is newer than the ISS, it's a step back in special effects. It's like they ordered the ISS on Wish. Here's an actual tweet. Elon Musk, 6/11/2023, looking to hire a VP of witchcraft and propaganda. Elephant Tux says here, when you get initiated into Hollywood, you're an actor 24/7. It's a good point. It's a good point. It's erroneous to assume that the actor that you see on the street engaging in protests is somehow autonomous and not playing a role. If you remember, right around the time the Joker movie came out, before the lockdowns, Joaquin Phoenix and Jane Fonda were doing something called Fire Drill Friday, where they were protesting climate change. And they got arrested. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting, because they had a sign behind him. It said something like, change the world. Joker star Joaquin Phoenix protests climate change with Jane Fonda, and Joaquin Phoenix arrested at Fonda's, probably a fake arrest. But the point of it is, this was right before the lockdowns. You had this climate change push. Tom Hanks was in Australia pushing climate change, Joaquin Phoenix, and they all had this image of the globe on fire, the burning globe, change is coming behind him. So we were looking at this symbol of the Phoenix, the burning globe, change is coming, and then he's also the Joker, and then within the next year, all of that seems to materialize. But to the point of the commenter, this is just an actor playing a role that actually was meant to go along with his Joker role, because what they've done is they've merged real and fake seamlessly. Messianic Charlatan says, among Pope Elon's crashed space phalluses will be opponents of the Federal Reserve's Global Replacement Bank. Yeah, they're going to fill up his Titanic. Pope Elon's space phallus will be filled up with a who's who in the Federal Reserves, whoever they want to replace. I mean, there's this whole, it'll be a repeat of the Titanic. It'd be interesting to see the list. Catching up on comments, Demetra101 says, like Greta's arrest. Right, exactly. Assuming Greta's not an animatronic. I often thought this could be an animatronic avatar of Al Gore. Now, Al Gore is not really all that mediagenic these days, if he ever was. And his whole objective is to make you basically fear going outside. Climate change, climate chaos. It's all about fear. And Al Gore is a prophet who's been self-discredited many, many times, and I think people got tired of him, and so they found a better version to sell it, which is what Greta actually represents. And it's the same message with the ponytail. It's just a animatronic avatar. Al Gorleone. I don't have agoraphobia, I have algoraphobia. And by the way, I knew Greta was a scam before I ever listened to her speak, because someone was asking me, "Did you hear about this Greta character at the UN?" And I was kind of putting it off. I didn't want to watch it because we've seen stuff like this before. Like, do you remember the incubator babies? We should remind ourselves of these things once in a while. So we had the incubator baby fake story. It was a hoax. The Kuwaiti incubator baby hoax. And this was in 1990. 33 years to the day, we had the Hamas baby hoax. This was last year. Just bringing it up, we have these repeated themes. And she's one of these propagandist recruit who's used at a very young age to deliver these whatever messages that they need to deliver. Child actress. And then you have on the other side of the fence, interestingly, Kyle Rittenhouse. And Kyle and Greta were born on the same day, January 3rd, 2003. So either that says something about astrology or the nature of the world stage script and the importance they place on dates. It's always symbolic. Angst G says, "Did it happen yet? Did I miss it? Perhaps next year?" Oh yeah, let's check up on our friends in Seattle. Is it still there? Okay, 26 minutes ago, there's been a shootout in northeast Seattle. A couple collisions, pretty clouds. Wind peaking at 86 up there on Mount Rainier. No nukes yet, but the day's not over. Okay, continuing. Fig says the incubator babies were on board the Titanic, which never sank. You know, I was looking at this Timothy McVeigh narrative and how Tim McVeigh supposedly killed like 168 babies, you know, in the government daycare. You know, his death toll is 168. The Oklahoma City bombing, 4/19/1995. And again, this was retaliation for Waco, which is why Trump kicks off his campaign in Waco. McVeigh, inspired by the Turner Diaries, written by an author born on 9/11, 1933. But anyway, looking at the story, there was 168 victims. And for those who don't believe that Tim McVeigh is Tim McVeigh, there's been this theory that Timothy McVeigh was repackaged as this Sergeant Weissapal. And they look the exact same, and it fits the whole template. So I'm looking at this Sergeant Weissapal character, and I'm like, okay, could this be the case? Could it be the same guy? And Sergeant Weissapal is credited with having rescued 168 children from trafficking. So like, that's kind of an interesting mirror there. But as far as Seattle, the news doesn't reflect anything, although we wouldn't know. I mean, presumably they'd be blacked out. I have zero expectation, but I would be surprised if something didn't happen that advanced this narrative forward. And that's why it was kind of interesting that you have this Cuban Missile Crisis 2.0, because it brings nukes onto the world stage into play. Commenter says Trump is a MAGA MAGA V. Yeah, fifth degree. He's a fifth degree MAGA. That's a Temple of Set rank. And how many times has he said witch hunt? He keeps saying it's a witch hunt. Shannon Jones says, I was hoping for some action today. Yeah, same. It's not that I'm bored. You know, we're not paranoid conspiracy theorists telling people to run for the hills. If anything, we're jaded media critics. And we're hoping they step up their game, give us a plot twist, give us an opportunity to deconstruct and reveal. Okay, look, I just caught something here. The AutoZone I was referencing a minute ago, which seemed to be a callback to the 2020 riots, the address is 648. Now, why is that significant? George Floyd, 846. That's when he was, no, that's a couple of things. Sunset, 846. He was kneeled on for 846. So this AutoZone has 648. Well, in February of 2022, in fact, on 2/2/2022, a 22-year-old named Amir Locke was killed by the police, and this created a lot of controversy. But think about his name, Amir. Well, when he was shot, Amir Locke that is, you could see on the camera, on the body cam time, the clock on the body cam footage, that it was 6:48 a.m. So it's a mirror of 8:46, and it was the result of a no-knock warrant, and so the name Locke also seemed highly significant. Then you had Jayland Walker, shot by 8 cops 46 times. My point being, I picked up on a lot of 846 and 648, all connected to the riot theme, the George Floyd theme. So here we have AutoZone again, and it's at a 648. Killing of Amir Locke, 22-year-old black American man shot on 2/2/2022. That's a lot of twos. Was it a Tuesday? Probably. Fig says dates don't match, however, if you put aside the dates and only look at the evolutionary aspects, it makes sense. Yes, I'm looking at this as a story, as a narrative, and predictive programming as repetition and saturation of the media environment, making something extraordinary and unusual seem like the natural consequence of what came before. So everything that we're seeing on the world stage presumably would then have some kind of precedent. And in this case, there is a lot with Seattle and this whole scenario. However, some have suggested, and I thought this at one point myself, that 3/11 Ground Zero Seattle could have fulfilled this. The predictive programming could have been for the pandemic. Does it have to be a nuke? Not necessarily. There are some similarities. Ground zeros, lockdowns, decontaminations, quarantines. I was NBC for my first MOS, and NBC does nuclear, biological, chemical. It's the same units, the same process. Penguin Doctor says, hey all you filthy penguins, nothing burgers from Seattle on me tonight. It's not over yet, but if you're in Seattle and you want to call in, numbers on the screen. And even though we're live right now and we'll be done here in about 45 minutes, I'll be in Discord until midnight at least. Elephant Tusk says, Oprah is part of the Mother of Darkness coven. Fig says, repetition or just many views of the same story. I view it as they're boring neural pathways in your mind. So when you see this thing on the news, or whatever they present, whether it's satellites falling from the sky, or buildings falling, or blackouts, or riots, you immediately have a reference for it that not only provides the visuals, but also provides some kind of direction, like narrative direction. Like, for example, the zombie movies could all have been predictive programming for lockdown. So the conditioning there is hide, lock your doors. If somebody isn't in quarantine with you, don't trust them until they've been tested. So I look at that as a form of training us on how to respond when it actually gets pulled off, whatever it happens to be. Again, Putin's military launches new nuclear weapon. So look at this. This is 6/11. We've been talking about nukes, and just look at the headline. Russia launches new nuclear weapon. If you just look at the headline, it says what we've been predicting, or what we were asserting would be something to happen today. Now the full thing is drill. They throw drill on there. But again, why is Russia showing the world its nuclear capabilities? Why are they flexing in this way right now? What is the purpose? And so this is all very consistent with our take, this Metascript perspective Let's continue going through your comments. Penguin says, IPS sussing out the false prophets in 2024. Pack your bags, dust your feet, turn off your gematria calculators, and beat it. Yeah, I agree with that. We've seen an army of grifters, an army of trolls, an army of clout chasers, but I don't even think that's what it is because so many of them are anonymous. Donnie Darkened, these strange, creepy accounts. And what they all have in common is they claim they are predicting something to come. Like, you're predicting something that's going to happen. And I'm like, no, nothing ever happens. Not in the way they say. The only thing you could say is that we're predicting what they're going to fake. We're predicting psyops. We're in the business of psyop prediction, if anything. We're not predicting the end of the world. By the way, 40 satellites were knocked down by a solar storm and incinerated on the Earth's return. NASA captures intense solar storm activity during June. It says here, according to their models, a M9.7 flare could hit the Earth on 6/11. SpaceX disclosed loss of 40 satellites following a geomagnetic storm. They're going to put 42,000 up there, by the way. 42,000 CubeSats. All right, let's continue through my notes. Jean Ann Valerie said this. I remember these days taking undercover. Oh, this is having to do with the nuke scenario. U.S. Civil Defense tweeted, U.S. on full alert. U.S. Navy P-8 Poseidon subhunter is flying over the coast of Florida in search of rogue Russian submarine. The Russian Navy nuclear submarine Kazan is 66 miles from the Florida coast. New Cuban Missile Crisis. So you have a lot of these doomers hoping, and a lot of them do hope. But the difference between them and us is that we're not hoping that a lot of people get annihilated. No, we're just waiting for the next psyop. But you have these others who are quite literally waiting for the world to end. They're essentially cheering it on. It's very nihilistic. But anyway, in the comments here, Binky says, I am a member of the still living duck and cover generation. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, JFK and Khrushchev came to an understanding, luckily for the sake of humanity, but today it's different. Russia has the upper hand. I love this. It's about humanity, like all mankind. They make it so apocalyptic and dramatic. That's the power of this God construct of the atom bomb, of the mass weapons of mass destruction in general. These are all just constructs used to frighten the sheeple. But he goes on to say here, Russia has succeeded in designing highly effective, unstoppable hypersonic missiles. Now that's something that's been talked about as well. Hypersonic missiles launched from submerged vessels, destroyers, anchored in Cuba. Another commenter said, I remember those days, telling us to take cover under our desks. Now, what are the desks made of? That these will protect them from these weapons of mass destruction. Like the same stuff they make 9/11 passports out of. The 9/11 terrorist passports that survived. You know, these desks have got to be made of something quite powerful. I'd like to get one of these for my house. It says here, this is the same commenter, I was going to school in the shrimping village of Mayport, and all it did was tell us that we could die in a moment's notice. It affected my whole life. Trauma-induced mind control. Now you believe that at any moment somebody could push a button and everybody dies. This is why I'm against 5G phobia. If you're afraid of 5G towers, how can you live? How can you walk down the street? Because there's always one in eyesight. I didn't necessarily fall for that, but when I started looking into it, people started saying 5G towers, melting your brain, sterilizing you, reading your thoughts. All these various things that the 5G towers were said to do to us suddenly became like plausible when I started noticing them. And I was like, why didn't I notice all these towers before? And so that's the power of suggestion. When somebody taps into the unknown and then attaches some kind of fear to it, like, what are they spraying? Now I'm afraid of clouds. What is that tower? Now I'm afraid of the tower. Now it didn't last. I knew it was ridiculous after a few minutes, but I realized that if someone can plant that suggestion, you will notice 5G towers all of a sudden. And it does seem kind of ominous because it's not hard to imagine these things as human bug zappers. Elephant Tusk says, when most people try to predict a date, they generally fail miserably. Yeah, you can't really, I mean, look, the dates, predicting dates is not really a thing. The significance of dates is usually figured or revealed after the fact. But how the 611 date, the number 611, is something that we had already picked up on. And it does have extreme significance here, simply because McVeigh is the OBL of domestic violent terrorism. And for his death at 33 to be on a 611 is perfectly matched with the 9/11 death of Mohammed Atta, 33-year-old lead attack or hijacker on the 9/11 PSYOP. And the parallel here is simply 9/11, 6/11, domestic versus external threats. So it fits within the script very neatly. And then as we move forward, you can find many instances of 6/11, 11/6 correlated with right-wing terrorism. Even in the Batman movie, Gotham underwater, 11/6, because of what the Riddler's online radicals did to flood the polls. Kevin Mooring says, so many say the sky is falling one day, Tim. They will be right. The sky's never fallen, and the world has yet to end. And I think the specific things that they use, like the sky is falling or the specifically global warming, climate change, the floods, the idea of like the world itself taking retribution against us, I think these are just easy to sell because these are traditional fears and they're just updating them. Tomanoid says Hunter Biden crap is all over the news. Why not tie that to that prediction? Yeah, look, I don't necessarily again go with the prediction thing because predictive programming, it's not really a misnomer, but it's more like you could call it I guess you could just call it conditioning because that's its real purpose. And it's not only predictive. It's not like they just do it far in the past. One of the things we picked up on is concurrent programming, where the news almost tracks perfectly. That's the dead giveaway that you're not dealing with something supernatural. And that's one of the debates I wanted to start inciting here is we need to debate, is the news written by a supernatural source? Is the news media divine, divinely inspired, like a Bible? Or is it all contrived by man? It's a valid question because synchromystics for about 20 years now have been looking at the news through the filter of predictive programming is evidence of the supernatural. And in doing this, in looking at it from this perspective, they have not identified the meta-scripters, nor the existence of a meta-script. In fact, many scoff at the idea that the news could be scripted. Their whole premise is man couldn't do this. It's too complex. It had to be a supercomputer. To which I would ask, well, who built the supercomputer that does things that man can't do? I mean, there's too many questions that it raises, but one of the recurring themes here is that their explanation for predictive programming and its relationship to the news is that it's supernatural. And I think we need to debate, is it newsbenders or supernatural agencies? It's a valid question. We should do a poll. Nick Fingar says, Jaron seems like he's going to give in and go to Antarctica. Yeah, I saw there's this plan to go to Antarctica, and I think Jaron said no, but it's to witness the 24-hour sun. Nick Fingar says, if he comes back and he says he saw the 24-hour sun, I'll believe you that he's a shill. Oh, he works for NASA. Look, there's no other way around it. I would bet money on this. He works for NASA in some capacity. There's no other explanation for how he presented ISS solar and lunar transits. Those are demonstrably fake. Why is he taking part in media fakery? Now, maybe he didn't want to, maybe they have a gun to his head. I don't know the deal he made, but if he's not a Fed or an informant or an operative, he's some kind of contractor who willingly took a clip that they gave him to present to the viewers he has as evidence of the existence of a space station. And there's no other way around it. What he presented is 100% a hoax. There isn't an argument that says the ISS isn't real, but something's up there. Sorry, that's not an argument. That's a common line you'll hear. Like, I don't know what I saw. It was shaped like the ISS, but do I believe it was the ISS? No. That's what he said. Sorry, you can't say that. If it's shaped like the ISS, it could not possibly be moving through the atmosphere. It just wouldn't work. Not at the speed it would need to travel to meet your transit point to align with the app. There's no way any man-made craft, any craft rather, the shape of the ISS could move through the atmosphere that fast. There's no drone, there's no plane. So the only way you could possibly have that transit occur at those times is if it were in fact in outer space. So you can't present the ISS and then say you don't believe in it. If you presented it, you saw it. There is no other explanation. So he must therefore be a space station believer. There's no way to walk back. However, the evidence he presented is ridiculous, as is the evidence for all other transits. You can just reject any ISS transit that is in front of the moon or in front of the sun. Both of these eliminate eyewitnesses. If it's in front of the sun, you can't see it. If it's at night and you're catching it in front of the moon, you can't see it at night because it's not reflecting the sun. So why would they only do transits where there's no eyewitnesses? It's a magic trick, that's why. And I've made it clear that the only way I'll accept somebody's ISS footage is if they show the app in the same shot that they show the light in the sky. Nobody can do that. Again, if you believe in the space station, take your ISS app and record it with the light in the sky behind it. Because ISS believers will confidently say to you, oh, you could just go outside with the app and see it. I see it all the time. Light in the sky. Well, then record it. They can't. Why not? Because they're lying. Penguin Doctor says, I think if they fake a nuke, it'll be at night. How many nighttime mushroom clouds have they shown us in movies? The crisis actors will say, I saw a huge flash and I felt like I was in a movie. You know what? That's something. At night, it would be easier to fake. 100%. Flash in the sky, less real eyewitnesses, and then everybody's tired and we're up all night. I think it could be far more effective if it's closer to midnight. Oswaldo says the stabbing of a 3-year-old in Ohio case is kind of disturbing. Yeah, I was looking into that for clues. Her name is Bianca Ellis. I saw the video. It is 100% disturbing, if real. And there was another video of the stabber wearing the shirt with a 6-pointed star. It says Western something. I don't know the cult she's a part of. Is it like Black Hebrew Israelites or something? But she supposedly stabs a 3-year-old to death. And I looked at it. It looks real. Does it mean it's real? No. Is it an extraordinary claim? Sadly, no. But they show her in her court photo in the courtroom smiling like the Joker. So it's total psychopathy. So I don't exactly know why they would put this on the news like this. I don't know if there's an agenda behind it. It doesn't seem unreal to me. Here's a video of her. She already had a warrant out for a theft conviction. Laughing.
Alice is seen going to the Volunteers of America thrift store, where police say she stole 2 knives, then briefly stopped in Bins and Things before walking into Giant Eagle. At 2:50
Giant Eagle.
she
Anyhow, I looked at this story. I didn't see anything to suggest it was fake, but I was noticing that there might be something in here. Because if this is atrocity propaganda and killing babies, killing children has been a thing in the last year, then this would be a story that would really disturb and trigger people. And then she's wearing this costume again. I want to find out the meaning of it. I think somebody had figured this out. but there is some kind of cult she appears to be a part of. Not sure what we're looking at. Random stabbing, Ohio grocery store. Stabbings were a big thing also earlier this year, so it kind of also fits that. But I don't know. Again, I'd say fake until proven real. Has this one met the burden of proof? I don't see any reason to challenge it necessarily. Major fault line off West Coast could trigger catastrophic 9 magnitude earthquake. Covered that. Okay, this is interesting. I mentioned Finis Temporis, great YouTube channel. Does these tremendous breakdowns of all these various movies and the symbolism behind it. And most of the people who watch it walk away from it saying, there's no way man could do this. Again, I'm tired of that explanation. That's what most people say. So let me go ahead and show you an example of one of his clips. This is the final shot of the King of Staten Island. So I started watching this. I couldn't finish it. The whole thing, it's about Pete Davidson. And in the movie, they make all these awkward jokes about how his dad died on 9/11, which is, quote, true. So his 33-year-old father died in the Twin Towers on 9/11. So I'm watching this movie, King of Staten Island. Pete Davidson, again, she was the one who was dating Kim Kardashian after Ye, and they had this back and forth beef. Many thought Ye was going to go OJ on Pete Davidson. I hoped he was going to, but that never happened. But we were examining this character for some time. Totally a world stager. But my question was, does he know that his father was a PSYOP operative? You know, was he let in on the secret? How did they let him in on it? And I found this interview with Pete Davidson and someone else talking about this, where he said that for years when he was growing up, he was visited by doctors from like Columbia University. They were like researchers asking him questions, like these psychologists asking him, do you believe your father really died on 9/11? I'm like, that's a real strange thing. In fact, there's a few interviews where he mentions this thing. It's like his whole thing. Here's Pete Davidson, a few articles about it. But my point of it is this. I've been wondering again and again, does this guy know? Is he in the know? How would he have been let in if his family's in on the PSYOP entertainment complex? So I watched The King of Staten Island, and one of the opening scenes, he's driving and these two cars crash behind him, which makes me think Twin Towers. It shows the radio, and he turns it on, and I think it's on like 113, and the One World Trade Tower that replaced the Twins opened on 113, 13 years after the Twins went down. But let me play a few clips here because you'll see that Pete Davidson carries a lot of the symbolism, iconography, and plays these roles that would suggest that he's an insider, that he's not oblivious, and that he is just that deep into the PSYOP entertainment complex, born into it. I'll put a link to this video below. This is from Finis Temporis, and this is his breakdown of King of Staten Island. The 2020 film King of Staten Island is a semi-autobiographical movie in which Davidson plays a guy whose firefighter father was killed in a fire when he was young. The final shot of the movie is said to be a tribute to his father and the victims of 9/11. The only problem with this is that the shirt he was wearing during the scene has the all-seeing eye. So for the first time in the movie, he wears a shirt with the all-seeing eye, and he takes the ferry to Manhattan. So he has the Illuminati eye on the back of his shirt. This is the final scene. And there's a lot of stuff in here. Walks between these two pillars. Very Masony. Again, all-seeing eye. Then he's staring up at the One World Trade Tower. And there's a lot of fascinating connections here. One, its height, 1776. Very significant. The $1 bill, of course, 1776, the all-seeing eye. And when you get close to the World Trade Tower, the One World Trade Tower, it looks like a pyramid. And I've seen this image floating around. You've probably seen it. So from the base of the One World Trade Tower, if you look up, it looks like a pyramid, like a with you even have the line here like a capstone. But to continue here, this is the video, the final shot of the King of Staten Island. Anyway, he revisits the 9/11 one-year anniversary ritual. And remember earlier this year, there was a late last year, a 33-year-old. Was it 9/11's anniversary even? A 33-year-old fell into the wishing well at the base of the towers. Nick Fingar says FM doesn't go to 113. No, I think it was the time. Like he turns his radio on or off, but they flash the number right after the things fall behind him. I didn't watch the whole movie though. I couldn't. I found it to be annoying. Pete Davidson's hard to watch, in my opinion. He's one of these individuals who I think it's likely he was simply given his, like, look, you can't say that all these people didn't earn the position through merit and talent and all that, but he may be an example of someone who is, like a Nepo baby or something. Like, his dad had a starring role in the major psyop of the millennium, so he gets these starring roles and he gets to hook up with celebrities. He's just, the red carpet's rolled out for him. He's born in the club. He's like psyop royalty. Like if David Hogg has kids, they're going to be involved in some major psyops. Okay, let's move on. Seattle is still standing as far as I know. If something has changed, just feel free to correct me. Lefty37 says, I just heard the episode where you talked about Ellen Moore. Funnily enough, there's a History Channel documentary about John Dee. One of the experts they interview is Alan Moore. Also, weird synchronicity, I happened to be studying acting in London, and I saw a play with Brian Cox. Then I watched that John Dee documentary, and he was the narrator. Very interesting. Woman accused of stabbing 33-year-old baby killer. So the first few articles, look, Bianca Ellis, 33. Then you have the CC with the county jail. 3-year-old, 333 county jail. Now that I'm looking at it and seeing the child's face being just put out there front and center, I'm kind of leaning towards psyop at this point. I'm looking at this as possibly a psyop. And you look at the charges she faced: 2 counts of murder, attempted murder, felony assault. There's all kinds of stuff here. And then she had a past as well. There was already a warrant. And one of the common themes seems to be that with crisis actors and participants at times, these are individuals who've made deals with the authorities. We've seen this among truthers. So perhaps this person made a deal to play a role in a psyop at the Giant Eagle. I still don't know. Anyone here think it's real? I'm not a reality denialist. Like, I would like it to not be real just because it's so atrocious, but anything that's presented in front of the public that has the capacity to trigger one half the population against the other half, if it feeds any one of these ongoing fires, I tend to look at it suspiciously. So here's a tweet that Illusion Warfare posted. Double cross at the overtake, the key moment. So this is a moment during a power walking race where Ukrainian athlete pinches 3rd place in a viral moment overtake which occurs between 2 crosses. So let me first show you what we're looking at. These 2 racers, and they're passing between these X symbols on the side. Now, Les Luthor points this out because he is noticing a lot of XXs, what he calls the double cross system. What John LeBon says is, was this planned by deceptive humans? Asking, me, was this planned by deceptive humans? So was it planned by humans for these 2 to finish in this order in front of that sign? So his implication here with his question is, was this planned by humans as opposed to what? Supercomputer, synchronicity, the demiurge. Is this something supernatural? And I would contend no. I automatically rule out the supernatural. if there is any significance to this, and I don't know that there is. I don't know the significance of it. But if there is any significance to it, I don't see any reason to insert the possibility that a higher power did this. I don't find this explanation holds up to scrutiny. So my answer was if, in all caps, if it has any significance. It could be intentional messaging, but I always argue human intention before entertaining the possibility there's something supernatural or unexplainable happening. So again, it would not have crossed my mind if, let's say, they crossed in front of these two X's and we did connect it with something. The double X does have some particular significance. Yeah, how easy would that be to coordinate? No reason to think that there are non-human operators or agencies behind any of the things that we see that have some deeper level of significance. Yeah, power walking, HG says, is that what they walk by all goofy? Yeah, power walking is sort of like, I think the rule is there has to be 1 foot on the ground at all times. So it's not really racing necessarily. It's not a jog. They can't leave the ground. But this particular power walking race ended with a double X. And again, I don't know that that has any meaning. Like, I don't assume that things have intrinsic meaning. I just look at these things as indicators based on past precedent. Like, for example, we happen to see the number 33 in practically every single PSYOP. Depending. If it's a race war PSYOP, there's going to be 42s. But these are just consistent themes. But I'm not saying for sure that every time you see 33, it's therefore a fake event or it was meant to convey something. It's context specific. Russian Vids, I think he changed his name to Ukrainian Vids in support of Zelensky. He used to do this thing where he would play the news reel and he would say, look, the color orange, there's an orange cone. There's the color orange, therefore Masons did it. So he took orange to be a symbol of Freemasonry. And I never quite understood that because it's very easy to just point at it and say, look, it's a hoax. And to me, that's not good evidence. Yeah, it's a hoax. Yeah, you're right. You're calling a hoax, but your evidence is wrong. We have to know why it's a hoax. So I would put him in the category of low information non-believer, quick to dismiss. We are informed non-believers. We have to know why the thing is fake. And so I don't think you can just say necessarily because of this. You have to look at other factors as well. But the 33 has been consistently associated with hoaxes. Has the double X? I don't know. Has orange? I don't know if you can make that case. So again, I don't know that this has any special meaning. But if it does, if it did, even if it was an Illuminati eye right there, let's just say it was an all-seeing eye right there at the finish line in a 666, I wouldn't immediately think, wow, the Demiurge is sending a sly signal to those of us paying attention. Or AI, some kind of higher power must be at work because no way humans could be behind that right there. No, that's not. That's the furthest thing from my mind. That is not even a remote possibility. Media does not have divine authorship, nor does Dianetics, the Quran, the Bible, or any other holy book. These are written by man. The news media is written by man. Even the directors we point to as being the writers of the very content we're pointing at. You can't even argue that they are divinely inspired unless you're going to say that James Cameron, Stanley Kubrick, Tom Clancy, and others are prophets, that they are inspired, that they're channeling higher powers. And I don't believe that Christopher Nolan and his brother are channeling higher powers because they have so much predictive programming in the Batman movies. I don't think Joaquin Phoenix is somehow fulfilling these roles on behalf of something that is, again, divine. I don't think there's divine authorship here. And that is the argument. That is the argument. Is it going to be, are we going to attribute the stuff we see in the news to a divine source or to man? Is it newsbenders or is it supernatural? That debate is coming. XG says Seattle was just destroyed. Awesome update there. Diana South says, one world has a cubic base and its edges form 8 isosceles triangles with a perfect octagon near the middle. We'll have to look into that. The One World Trade Tower is very interesting. 1776 feet high, obvious connections, Tower of Babel. Then you have the date that it was opened, 11/3, 113, which is also 73 seconds, or the date 113, but 11/3, 311, very significant because you have 9/11 and 3/11, or the 11/3, just right there connected at ground zero. The fact that it looks like a syringe, probably not a coincidence. And again, syringe comes from the Greek word syrinx, which is Pan's flute. Kevin Mooring says, Pete Davidson performing in New York this September. Tickets go on sale on Friday. Frank Murr says, walking around with a huge knife, nobody says anything. Yeah, I was like, what is he? Is this a CGI attack? I mean, is this person even real? She's walking around with a knife, and nobody in the store is looking or reacting. Like, they're just not even paying attention. So that's another reason why I thought it looked kind of possibly fake or staged. Okay, we're still waiting on news from Seattle. One person said it's been destroyed, but I need someone else to corroborate with that. Isabel Ann says, I've had a higher power save me from falling down a flight of stairs. I'm not discounting higher power or supernatural, but I'm avoiding the mystification of media. If magic, however you define it, exists or is a component, it has to be looked at from an objective perspective, maybe even as an anthropologist. Why are they doing this? Why are these symbols, these archetypes being employed here? But when it comes to the eerie coincidences they manufacture, these are all manufactured. It wouldn't make sense if there was divine authorship or a divine cause behind these coincidences. Let's just say predictive programming is caused by the universe. The universe is hinting at things to come. That only makes sense if the events are real. All the 9/11 predictive programming only makes sense to attribute that to a higher power if 9/11 was real. Why would God, or whatever you're inserting here, why would your higher power drop hints about future fake events? And why would it lean left? Like predictive programming for climate change, for example. That's a leftist agenda. Are you saying that the demiurge or God is a liberal leftist, that the divine source behind the media coincidences has a political bias? And why is it that all the things that are predicted through eerie coincidences are not only fake, but inconsequential oftentimes, like almost like just purely for political points? Whether it's the I mean, how important in the grand scheme of things is a Parkland or is a Boston bombing? And these are all things you can find predictive programming connections for. 9/11, I can understand, it's huge, but then you have stuff like Trump kicking off his campaign in Waco, for example, or the Uvalde shooting timed with Stranger Things and the character Elle killing those kids. See, these are examples of the alignment between the entertainment programming and the news media, which wouldn't make sense if it were coming from a divine source. Or take Leave the World Behind. Leave the World Behind, produced by the Obamas, chock full of predictive programming for events that happened over the last 8 months, from Boeing and plane incidents to blackouts with AT&T. Again, is Obama working on behalf of some higher power to put these things into his movies? And then it really raises the question too. Some of these directors provide predictive programming for hoaxed events, but then some of these, like for example, let's just go with, I guess we should probably go with Kubrick's one of the easiest ones. But anyway, my point of it is, if there's predictive programming for 9/11 in The Shining, then why would this sync theory also include retroactively dropping hints about Apollo 11? Like everything I'm saying here is just kind of suggesting that the explanation for a higher power makes zero sense when you consider we're predicting fakery. We're talking about propaganda. the propaganda explanation makes a lot more sense. And I also think that synchromysticism as an approach maybe was the most reasonable explanation at the time. But I think it may also have been a deliberate misinformation take. If they find out the news is fake, their default position is going to be to think reality is fake, and that they're seeing indication of the fakery of reality itself being exposed through the news media. So it's like how people look at their holy books as divinely inspired, and they say there's no way man could have written this because this character fulfills all these prophecies from this book. Well, it's a closed system. This could all be contrived. James M. says the One World Trade Tower is an elongated Star of David. KKIN says definitely don't think divine is in control, but in control are doing the best to keep the masses thinking it's divine. Exactly, it's a God proxy. The left already worships government as God. They've already adopted state-olatry. And what they have are replacement myths. Noah's flood has been brought back with climate change. Heaven has been replaced by space. Angels have been updated into aliens. And this explains why the right wing thinks that aliens are demons. But my point of it is, everything that we're seeing here is an indication that they're trying to, or they have succeeded in creating a religion of government. And the media is its church. And not only that, but it's global in its reach and impact. Even though it looks like it's divided, this is the one world monotheistic religion. And it is monotheistic. It's a monopoly on worldview. And their God construct is Gaia, the angry flood god. Their devil construct is the pandemic. But I think they're trying to introduce AI as a mind that is higher than ours because it's not bound up in the needs of the flesh or greed or any of the sins that plague man. So they're trying to make us think that there is a higher power coming. So I think that the idea of attributing mass media synchronicities or coincidences or eerie coincidences like the Palestine, Ohio train derailment follows Netflix white noise. The tendency to call that the result of a higher computer, a supercomputer, to me, that is accepting the premise of an AI God. Higher than man? If you're a synchromystic and you're suggesting that the news is coming from a source, quote, higher than man or supercomputers, you've taken a leap. You've accepted a divine authorship explanation for news events. You have fallen for their trap. You have accepted a God proxy. They have fooled you into accepting a premise. And that's the same with religions. It's a trick. Again, it's a fallacious way of looking at things. And we're trying to evolve this conversation. And if we're going to unravel how this stuff works, it goes beyond just crisis actors and minor influence operations. But one of the things that works or that has maintained this thing has been its secrecy. How do they maintain its secrecy? Well, nobody believes in reality hackers. You notice reality hacking, and by this I mean influence operations through predictive programming, steering the news, writing our history in advance. The people noticing it aren't looking for human agency. They're automatically ascribing it to a higher power. John Connor warned about AI, says Kevin Mooring. James Cameron, JC, John Connor, and of course, Terminator 2 contains copious 9/11 predictive programming. Again, where's the higher power in this? James Cameron, Terminator 2, 9/11 predictive programming. James Cameron, Titanic, 9/11 predictive programming. Titanic splits in two, sinks, has jumpers. 4 years before 9/11. On 9/11, he's at the Titanic, filming Ghosts in the Abyss. Again, nothing here to me would indicate a higher power, but more examples of how man misdirects man through mass deception. Penguin Doctor says, Tim, next time you have Jurassic Liars on the show, let him know it's okay to get duped. We've all been there. At least he's passionate about what he does. He should just write a novel. I don't know if I agree necessarily, because he's pointing out what is on the news, as are we. And he's not wrong. Like, for example, I mentioned earlier how Robert De Niro's significance at the court trial has to do with his role in Joker getting killed, his role in Taxi Driver as the assassin, and that John Hinckley was inspired by De Niro to shoot Reagan. Well, what you can add to this, and this is what JL even brought up, and this is why I'm saying his methodology derives a lot of useful information that seems to comport with this bigger theme. He's like, well, by the way, 5/29 is JFK and John Hinckley's birthday, and that's the 149th day of the year, which is the 35th prime, JFK 35th president. So there's these overlapping connections that are unignorable. I just don't think you can predict dates with that level of specificity. But I'm still open to the idea that there would be a major plot twist or advance right now. And in part, the Cuban Missile Crisis 2.0 kind of brings that up. Armin Ree says, I see reality as real but not true. Nonetheless, what happens here has importance and significance at higher levels. I think what I'm trying to avoid is this: reality denialism. If somebody says to me that there's nothing that's real, or that reality is fluid, it's end of discussion, because that's gaslighting. Reality is real. It is objectively real, and it is objectively true. It exists, and we experience it. To say otherwise is to be self-gaslighting. Now, our concept of it is different. The map is not the territory. It's augmented. It's influence. Our perception is highly selective. And out of all the information we take in every second, we only focus on a minute fraction of the totality of the info that we take in. We're hackable animals, and our perceptions can be easily manipulated. And one of the common threads with mind control is take them out of reality. Take them out of objective reality, put them into a subjective box where they can be totally controlled. And we live in a world of mind-controlled sheeple because they lack an objective basis for their observations they make, which is heavily influenced by consensus and by whatever's put through the reality monopolizer's viewfinder, the screen that the universal view that we're given. So what I'm kind of saying here is that nobody benefits more from people paying attention, arriving at the wrong conclusion, arriving at subjectivity and mysticism than the power elite. They would love us all to have our heads stuck in the metaverse, playing video games 24/7, just immersed in Netflix and all these dystopian movies they've created for us that set our expectations of the future. But similarly, they would like us to not pay attention, to think paying attention is futile because nothing is real. And I would arrive at that if I thought that nothing was real. I'd be like, well, why would I care about fake news if the world's fake? So I don't believe I don't experience the world as fake. And anybody who tries to tell me that I don't exist or that nobody exists but me, it seems like they're trying to push some kind of a spell on me, like disabuse them of the idea that anything matters. It comes off as very nihilistic. And if your contention is that nothing is real or that there is something more significant beyond the material world, that again falls into this mysticism and idealism. And I think that's where they want us. For example, I don't believe that there's going to be Mars bases on Mars, but they can use the utopian vision of Mars to convince us that this is the best way to live. Meanwhile, they're disabusing us of the idea that Earth is here for us to exist on, but rather Earth is a victim of us. So there's this obvious attempt to disabuse us of our connection to reality itself. There is a war on reality, and I'm not going to cede any ground here. Like, I know what's real. I'm not going to back off. I know the ISS is fake. Not going to back off. And it is definitely a war on real. Angst G says we don't live in a simulation, but more of a dissimulation. Armin Ree says, Tim, what I meant was that if reality were true, it would be independent of observers, and it isn't. I guess I am an objectivist, and auto-hoaxing and media skepticism is from an objectivist standpoint that rejects the obligatory subjectivism of accepting the argument from the screen's authority. And this is important. This is a philosophical question, and it's about our operating systems. And so if we give up any ground here, then we lose our credibility as witnesses to truth. So, for example, if you're going to tell me that nobody died on 9/11 and the planes were fake, I'm like, okay, cool. You're adhering to reality. You're not being influenced by that screen. But if the same person then says, the tag on my underwear changed because reality shifted it right after it changed the Bible, and they erased my favorite episode of Lassie, I'm going to say, well, I don't really know if I need you on my debate team about 9/11 because you seem to be confused about the nature of reality itself. And I am not confused. I'm here to dispel confusion. So when I look at the world around me, I'm not scratching my head. Is this real or fake? No, no confusion here. Commenter Arthur Zulin says, what do you think of Jurassic Liar's channel on Seattle? Hopefully I can get him to call in, if not now, maybe later this evening. I've been speaking with him for some time about this, and I was aware of his work, and he picked up on a lot of things. It wasn't just Seattle and Trump, but various names, words and names that seem to indicate hoaxery. And he's very well aware of the deceptive nature of mass media. But where we overlapped is when, in our examination of the big world stage script unrolling, seemed to indicate heightened significance to the number 611 and this theme of domestic extremists getting their hands on a nuke and hitting the Pacific Northwest. This has been a reoccurring theme throughout predictive programming for years. So then I come across his channel, and there's some overlap. Now we have different reasons for looking at the same thing, but the overlap comes from we're drawing from the same pool of information. And I find a lot of his information is very intriguing because it suggests we're right about the scripted nature of it, because this script is internally consistent. And a lot of the stuff that he's uncovered, stuff that I would not have been aware of, has to do with the significance of dates, birth dates, death dates, event dates, which makes perfect sense considering the astrotheological nature of the cult that runs this place, and it's all about dates. And when I say astrotheology, they worship the luminaries. You do too. I mean, if you, on New Year's Eve, if you were jumping up and down, counting down 10 to 1 when the ball dropped in Times Square, you, with billions of others, were actually celebrating the dog star Sirius, which is the god star in every Masonic and occult lodge. And the dog star reaches its peak at midnight on December 31st, and then it falls. So the ball drop is actually a representative of the dog star Sirius. My point being, we are immersed in a world of occult rituals, and these various rituals and rites are performed in front of the public who have an exoteric view because we are hoodwinked. We have been veiled. But if you have an esoteric understanding, you can see how it all does tie into their control over time and space, and timing is everything, and it's highly significant, and therefore dates. Just as an example, George Floyd kneeled on 8/46, 9/11 kicks off at 8/46, sun sets 8/46, and I mentioned all these other martyr cases, Jayland Walker, Amir Locke. 8/46 is a huge code. And what are the odds? Jayland Walker shot by 8 cops 46 times. And so having analyzed these things, it's like, yeah, they are OCD about it. But this is the nature of magic. If you look at ritual magic, it's all about encoding meaning, and it's about timing. They ascribe a significance to every hour. Every hour is governed by a certain planetary influence, and it's very precise down to the minute. Mercury was rising at 8:46 a.m. on 9/11 when the first plane hit, which has great significance for a lot of reasons, but also pertains to some predictive programming. Like, for example, I mentioned Pete Davidson's dad dying on 9/11. Well, there's another actor whose dad died on 9/11, Miko Hughes. This was the kid Gage, the child Gage from Pet Sematary. Well, Miko Hughes' father died on 9/11, which is highly significant because he was in a movie called Mercury Rising. Mercury rising, 8:46 a.m. 9/11. At 8:46, his father died. Mercury rising. Now, Mercury rising is about this autistic child who was able to crack government codes, and somehow this makes him a threat to national security. But it's in a movie with Bruce Willis, who is heavily associated with explosions, planes exploding, building explosions, Die Hard. Anyway, you can believe this if you want to. Personally, I don't. In fact, there's quite a lot about this character and all of these characters. The more I dig into them, the ones who are connected to any of these psyops, um, they're constructs. Echo Charlie says, I'm glad we quit talking about how I can't say that word, aren't real. Interesting statement there. Yeah, I'm done with the whole topic, to be honest. I mean, the year 2020 was when they introduced a major component of this new religious paradigm. And this space age to me is about introducing this new religion, this universal religion, this new heaven that encompasses all the other heavens. And they've been, like, Christian, Muslim, Jew, atheist, they all agree on the existence of space. And space is where we have our future progress and evolution as a species. But there's this development of the space program thing that's gone on for several generations now, where it's like what they're doing, I believe, is giving us our perfect worldview, setting the stage for all time, and it is the universal religion. But moreover, I think space is a metaphor for the mind, the inner space, the space between our ears, which is what they have hijacked and taken control over. So it's not just literally space, but it's your inner space. And I keep finding this theme emphasized about billionaires being problematic. This is why Elon Musk is being made an example of. He's the lead producer of Mind Junk Contaminating Cyberspace, our commons, which taps into our inner space. And he's the leading producer of Space Junk, which is contaminating low Earth orbit, our commons. And we can't go anywhere if that place is subject to too much space trash. Mind junk, space junk. Space is a metaphor for the mind. It's mind control. And in order to control our minds, they got to get rid of mind junk. And what is mind junk? Conspiracy theories, skepticism, facts. And he's a fall guy for free speech. All right, Armin Ree says, I didn't mention shifting reality, but the attributes of truth. This reality is objectively real, but it's not true because it's reactive to observation. Individual sinks are proof of this. Sure. I mean, we can certainly discuss this, but I'm not a mystic, and I am an objectivist. Here's where I always found Ayn Rand fell short, where she ruled out mysticism, supernatural, God, because she was an objectivist. However, she filtered her entire philosophy through mass media, through official history, through its God constructs, believes in the space program. So you cannot call her an atheist. You cannot call her philosophy objectivism. It was hijacked from the very beginning. But even as I was studying her work, I was also picking up on synchronicities. But I never mystified it, but I never excluded it either. So I felt like there's something very limiting to that view. But at the same time, having one experience that suggests that reality isn't as the mainstream model contends doesn't mean that reality itself is invalidated and that your perceptions are lying. So I think we have to hold fast to our perceptions. We cannot deny our perceptions, and we cannot trust people who say, you can't trust your perceptions because this changed and that changed and you're a sheep because you haven't seen it, which would be the Mandela effect. It's all gaslighting. But I'm not ruling out anything. I'm not really ruling out anything at all. But what I am maintaining is my stance that you can't prove reality's fake. You can prove the news is fake. And that the main distinction here too is that our worldview is not the world. These are important separations. We have Discord as well. If you want to call in or you want to access, we can log into Discord. We don't just have to use the phones, by the way. Echo Charlie says pre-modern medicine just can be observed. Um, yeah, look, I'm not 100% sold on the anti position or the pro position. What I am aware of is that every natural phenomenon can be augmented by mass media. They can lie. You can have a spring shower and they can portray it as a hurricane if they want to. You've seen these news reporters leaning into the wind, talking to the cameras. Meanwhile, someone in the background is walking upright. It's just so stageable. But it's pretty clear to me that the utility, the political utility of the pro-anti stance versus the needle, what is essentially making people choose between government as savior or nature slash God. I'm a pure blood by birth, or I've been purified by government. Which is it? Who's purer? Who's got the pure blood? The one who took the salvation, the injectable Eucharist, purified by the priesthood of the World State Church of Media and Scientism, or the people who rejected that and maintained their natural immunity? Who's got the pure blood? Pure blood versus goo blood? Or is it purified blood versus the unpure? It's like Protestant or Catholic. Who's going to hell? Who's saved? Who isn't saved? And the Protestants would be the anti-media, anti-pokey. And it's purely political warfare. There's nothing about medicine whatsoever. Nobody's life was threatened. Nobody died. It was a huge psyop, and a lot of people got duped. Truthers got duped very hard. The antis are dupes. The pros are dupes. If you're not anti-pro and anti-anti, you're a dupe to a large extent on this. Let me log into Discord really quick here. We have a few people in the Discord chat. In fact, I was thinking about live streaming from Discord if people want to have a more extended conversation. Because we're closing up here in about 2 hours, so I could end this, and then I'll just leave it live, and we'll leave the Discord open. Let me see how many people are in there. We had a very interesting conversation yesterday, and to me it comes to the question of models. How do you see the world, and is your model accurate? And I had a great conversation with Etheric Bliss, and his concept is very different from mine as far as what this place is. But there's a lot of overlap. But I don't think it makes sense to think solely in terms of the physicality, the geography, round or flat, pointless. To me, it's more about open or closed. So if you want to go into the chat on the Discord server, just jump into the IPS voice chat. I'll put a link below. Okay, I'm catching up on comments here. We have about 30 people on Twitter, 90 on YouTube, and a few dozen of others scattered on the other platforms. As far as I know, Seattle is still standing at this moment, and I'm going to be jumping into the Discord server after this. Let's go ahead and see if we've missed anything on my notes here. You could find minds.com/Infinite Plane Society linked at the main site, ips.monster, and you can find links to all of the things we discuss. We mentioned AutoZone, looted in LA, possibly a hint as to what's to come, and the address is 648, which again is a mirror of 846. Rudolph Giuliani got arrested for, I believe it had to do with the election fraud scheme in Arizona, but here he is smiling like the Joker. Don't know what to make of that. You may recognize him as the mayor, Giuliani, who was making out with Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump motorboated him. I think that's the word. You've probably seen the video. Just normal stuff. Normal stuff that God's chosen would be doing when he's not busy with porn stars or on a one-man crime spree. Talking about the God, Emperor, King, Savior, Donald Trump. Again, this has been IPS adding context that we thought you might need to know. There's just so much more to talk about, but luckily we have our Discord server open. So we'll go ahead and go into Discord here, and I will definitely have Craigbot on to record it, but we may actually live stream it. It just depends on how active it gets. The night's not over. It's still 6:11 for a few more hours. So you're not in the clear if you're in Seattle. And I'm not expecting, and to me it's not about nothing burgers or burgers that have something in them. I'm not expecting anything. If anything, maybe a plot twist. But I don't think we can say, oh, it must happen next year. I don't think it's about the dates. I really don't. And I don't think it makes sense to push it back a year arbitrarily, especially not when we've seen such a buildup of the narrative regarding both the Trump event and the nuke itself, wherever it happens to be. I mean, maybe they'll nail Mar-a-Lago. I mean, they're on the other side. All right, this has been great. I'll see you all in the Discord server. If you need a link, I'll be posting it here below. And I'm going to just go ahead and send out the rest of the archives, and hopefully I can catch up on that. This is PGA Black Sheep. Music by Allergic to Bullshit.
For as long as I remember, my mom never was able to surrender. Yet if this shit keeps going on, I need to find me 24/7 bartender. Society's now so far astray that they love the message to which they pray. Total fanatics liking all that which treats them like prey. They can't stay away. And if you dare to say out loud that for this state you got nothing but doubt, your peers will make sure you experience serious cash flow drought. The black sheep's in the herd, the crazy ones which society hurt. Not playing along with the absurd, able to see what was to be obscured. Not setting freedom for feeling secure. They co-opted every venture of the human soul, all the while marching towards that fucked up end goal, selling communism and laying out the psychological ground. Kids being propagandized and molded since early playground, killing the feeling of self to suffer for the greater good. This fairy tale even most leftists never really understood. Doesn't matter, now we're all wearing the hood, lost our faces wherever we stood. Music's now about selling drugs, coma, drinking and sex. CA's been given hippies hugs, drawn upon the hacks. Band's been manufactured, branded, used and suicided. Lead the counterculture and shirts divided. Bent over idols, raptured on TV for a fact of tragedy. Fake reported real is a new baseline melody. Journalism's now nothing but a mere parody. You need an auto hoax to retain your sanity. The black sheep's in the herd, the crazy ones which society hurt. Not playing along with the absurd, able to see what was to be obscured. Not setting freedom for feeling secure. It's all fucked up wherever I look. Children have no interest of reading a book. School hammered it out of their little heads, having them learn useless shit, bought to be dead. Listen and repeat over and over again. No wonder they close their minds according to plan. When parents ain't there and the state plays its game, no brain, no shame. Every dictated curriculum is lame. In 1984, all were laid out what 2020 would actually do. Just a little late, we've been overdue. The street was paved long ago when the federal turf got its go. Total control brought to a wider scene, delivered by the screen. A hijacked financial system at the base for the greater scheme. And the halls of mental asylums echoes what critical voices scream. Division is on every level, but have your dream. Allopathic drug dealers, botchers and psycho rapists thrive. The thief management of the road that healthcare does drive. The black sheep's in the herd, the crazy ones which society hurt. Not playing along with the absurd, able to see what was to be obscured. Not selling freedom for feeling secure. Retirement provisions co-opted by father state, making sure no one really owns any real estate. Mandatory payments directly subtracted from the loans. No questions asked, like they're all just drones. The taxation is theft, knows even skull and bones. Secret societies infested all campus life. You'd have to be corrupt to join such a half. Members to compartment the TV murder crew. Students specialized to lose the broader view. Concepts meant to divert in disguise. In the end, no one's able to visualize. Same goes for the heavily censored interwebs, where J-Tricks, trolls and agents set their traps. To lure in the light-minded to the dumbest theories, meant to be laughable issues made up of fallacies. Government guard rating and sensitivities. The black sheep's in the herd, the crazy ones which society had. Not playing along with the absurd, able to see what was to be obscured. Not selling freedom for feeling secure. Society's being divided on every level they can. Fear is spread by virtually all media of all